Welcome to April Gloaming's Sunset Salon. This is our quarterly virtual event held around sunset on the last Sunday of the month. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight, we are live on Instagram and YouTube with 3 April Gloaming authors and me, your host, Christine Hall. We have with us tonight Allison Cundiff, author of the novel The Mysterious Women of J Road. We also have Darren C. Demaree, author of the forthcoming poetry collection, Got There, Poems on Vanishing, and Chelsea C. Jackson, author of the poetry collection, All Things Holy and Heathen. We will begin the evening with 10-minute readings from each of our 3 authors present, and then we will come back together for a salon-style conversation where any of our authors can answer or give input into each question asked, in the hopes that we can foster an environment where conversations run freely. For those of you in attendance, please use the comments on whichever platform you are streaming from to offer potential questions for our authors as we get near the salon portion of the evening. So if you hear something and you want to ask a question, drop it in the chat. We would love that. At this time, pull down your blinds, get cozy, and settle in. Our first reader tonight is Allison Cundiff, author of the novel The Mysterious Women of J Road, released this past March by April Gloaming Publishing. Allison Cundiff is the author of several collections of poetry, including Snapshot, Bottle Cap Press 2023, Just to See How It Feels, WordPress 2018, Otherings, Golden Antelope Press 2016, and In Short, A Memory of the Other on a Good Day, co-authored with Stephen Schreiner, Golden Antelope Press 2014. Her first novel, Hey Pickpocket, was published in 2025 by Jackleg Press. Connect at allisoncundiff.net. Here's a synopsis of The Mysterious Women of J Road. Some wounds never fully close. After suspecting her husband has been hexed in Ozark Hill Country, Lillian Cedars goes deep into the backwoods to seek an antidote. What she finds is a world with a dark and malevolent past, where hill folk and their acolytes turn on anyone who dares enter their territory. And when Lillian encounters them, she learns not only their capacity for evil, but her own as well. The Mysterious Women of J Road presents the collision of superstition and the supernatural in the remote and tangled mountains of southern Missouri. It is a world of secrets whispered between women for generations, women whose ways and whose burdens define who they are, what they stand for, and how far they'll wade into the murk of danger to protect their kin. Select starred review by Forward Magazine. Southern Gothic meets feminist, supernatural horror in Allison Cundiff's thrilling novel, in which a gifted woman raised on the righteous side of the Ozarks Divide is forced toward reckoning. A gorgeous tale of self-sacrifice for love runs beneath The Mysterious Women of J Road, a haunting, often terrifying novel that pulses with folk magic. And now, we would like to welcome Allison Cundiff. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. And thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. It's great to be here. I'm going to read a chapter from Mysterious Women of J Road. And this segment's from the beginning of the novel when 4 friends decide to go hunting. They're going frog hunting. And one of the wives, Lillian, the main character, warns them, don't cross Lick Creek into private property. And as we know, a lot of these warnings are not heeded. And unfortunately, this one isn't as well. And the men do cross over. So the morning of the hunt, one of Jess's best friends, his name is Sam, comes over. And he has a brief conversation with Lillian, and that's what I'm going to read from. Lillian is trained in what's called granny medicine. She's a granny woman. And in Ozark mythology, granny women are Roughly, I would say the equivalent of sort of a primitive midwife. They do all things medicinally oriented in the country where there is often not access to traditional health care, and they're trusted by more remote folk to have that health care in place of traditional Western medicine. So Sam pulls up, he sees Lillian, he can kind of feel her otherness in this chapter. So this is chapter 4 of The Mysterious Women of J Road. Sam spent the ride to Jess's with the windows down, feeling the warm wind against his face, the trees full of the sound of high summer. His dog BJ lay in the bed, his head raised in the wind, snapping at flies in the pre-dawn light. Sam pulled up to Jess's gravel driveway, slowing as he spotted Jess down by the cove. Jeff's wife, Lillian, stood on the porch, packing what looked like biscuits into paper bags. Lillian was a pretty thing with mouse-colored hair, all tied up in a knot on her head. She had big eyes that were always looking you over, it felt like. That morning, she was wearing a little smock that showed her legs, which were covered in bites. She squinted when she saw Sam's truck moving toward him as he pulled in beside Jeff's old Chevy. Lillian and Jess were both hill folk, but she was even more backwoods than Jess. She hadn't done proper school at all, not even one day. Hadn't had any vaccination shots, neither. Jess said she called them government pinpricks. Kept to her people and away from town mostly. Her grandmother had schooled her in hill medicine, so their cabin was covered in old shards of things, antlers, little vials of herbs and such. Even a snapper shell that sat right on their kitchen table held the butter and the napkins, gave Sam the creeps. When Jess had first told the men he planned to marry her, the men suggested he'd been bewitched. Jess laughed so hard at the watering hole he spit out his Budweiser right there on the ground. Kurt had put his arm around Jess, told him he was worried things were moving too fast, that he needed time to play the field before settling down. But Jess shook his head at that, said he had known since he first laid eyes on her, said she was good to the core. Kurt countered she was just the only nice girl Jess had ever bagged was all. Jess said over the jukebox she was pure heart, said his mother would have liked her. Sam took Jess's side then. Dead mothers always have the last word. Lillian didn't doll up like the girls in town, but you could tell her figure, even through her shapeless clothes, long and willowy like a weasel, but strong in the wrists. She and Jess had met at country church, some sort of primitive Baptist congregation Jess's mother once belonged to before meeting his father. Sam had first seen the church when on a delivery for the mill and wondered what sort of people gathered there. No structure, no missiles, just an altar made of stones and a collection of haphazard stumps for seating. They didn't even read from the Bible. Preacher just barked at them about hell for a half hour each week. Sam had stood up at their wedding in his only good shirt and watched in awe as the pastor, a small stooped man dressed all in black, joined his best friend and this hill woman in matrimony. They weren't even to kiss when it was over, but get onto their knees before the altar and recite the Lord's Prayer, the pastor's hands on their heads. After the cemetery, Brutus whispered to Sam that Lillian's grandmother kept a pet rattler in her quarters. Sam had said that was a damn story, but Brutus insisted it was true. Lillian lifted her head in a wave as she walked to Sam, shielding her eyes against the rising light. She was pretty in a sort of clean way, but something about her unsettled him, as though she knew of things but kept them secret. Most medicine women, called grannies in their parts, were long gone, but the high country relied on them still, and Lillian had a steady stream of clients. She and another woman had delivered 2 of his co-workers' babies. Her grandmother sold vials at the markets. He'd fingered one when he was a child, but his mother pulled him away, telling Sam country medicines caused the icy hands. Sam would see grannies sometimes in general stores or on his way somewhere in the deep country. They were the ones hill people called with their urgencies. They were superstitious women who spent their time in rockers or collecting berries, or to address injuries that town doctors couldn't quite cure. Stooped and wrinkled, they quietly carried around their bags of tinctures and walked barefoot straight into your home. They handled childbirthing and presided over burying the local dead, though they didn't dig the graves. The last Indian property in Camden County abutted the south lick off J Road where the grannies practiced, and he'd often see them together in their old pickups or in the hardware store, their heads bent low in conversation. The locals whispered that people in their parts even dabbled in witchcraft. Lillian rested a pale forearm on Sam's door side, her dog following her. Wendy, she called her, was a good-looking shepherd mix who stood unmoving at her side, watching BJ as he paced nervously in the back of the truck. Sam meant to ask Jess about how he trained her up to be so steady as he was working on BJ's jitters. Little something for the road, Lillian said, handing him the biscuits, then reaching in the back to pet BJ. BJ licked her hand. What do we got here? Sam said awkwardly, looking in the bag as he killed the engine. Ham and biscuits. Hope you like mint jelly. Mighty kind of you, Sam said. Can your dog have a bit of ham? She asked, reaching into her apron as BJ watched her. He'd love you for that, Sam said, warming to her completely. It was then he noticed the baby, just a bundle and a gray slip against her chest. It was brand new looking with a shock of black hair the color of Jess's and pink all over. He wondered briefly if he'd ever meet a woman who'd have his baby. He wondered if he'd have to go to the hills to find someone uncut by the world and its cruelty. Sam got out, moving to hold BJ at the collar and noticing her dog's stillness as it watched him. Your dog sure is trained up, Miss Lillian, Sam said. Wendy's a good one, she said, turning her odd eyes toward Wendy. She panted as she nosed Lillian's ham, wholly uninterested in BJ. You feeling okay after the baby and everything? Sam asked awkwardly after a moment. Just fine now, Sam, she said, keeping her face even, as though she was just being polite. That's a healthy-looking baby, girl or boy? He asked. Girl, she said, peeking down and lifting the fabric to show a small pink face all scrunched in sleep before covering her quickly again. She looks so tiny, don't she? Sam said without thinking, trying to avoid looking at the outline of Lillian's breasts under her thin dress. She sure does, she said without thought of Sam's oddness. Day and a half ago she got here. Truth be told, I'm taking her to lay her down. Just wanted to see you all off proper. You sure you're okay? All alone? He asked, thinking he sounded weak as though he said it, as though under some kind of spell. Sure thing, Sam. Jess has been looking forward to this trip all week. He knows I love frog legs, she added, her odd eyes turning up again to lock onto Sam. To him, they looked like animal eyes, all yellow-colored, like muted balls of sunlight on an overcast day. Thanks for thinking of us. Her dog inched closer to her as she spoke, her muzzle brushing against Lillian's bare legs. Yes, ma'am, Sam said, turning to lower the tailgate to break away from her gaze. I'll make sure we get your 100. Good man. Y'all be safe today, she said, smiling as she turned to look for Jess, her eyes finally resting elsewhere, the heat of her hand leaving a print on his top railing. A part of him longed to touch it, to touch a piece of her, and he watched her move barefooted toward the cabin, crossing the briar patch with ease. He considered her long, bit-up legs and felt a mixture of hard lust and fear before turning back toward the truck, grateful to be done with the pleasantries. She left him both stirred and discontented. He wondered soberly how Jess and Johnny could stand being around women all the time. Jess came up around the side of the cabin, raising his hand to Sam, and Lillian's face landed warmly on her husband's. Sam was not used to that kind of affection from women. Sex was something he had experienced mostly in low lights after a brief courtship over the noise of a jukebox. Women looked something different to him the next morning, something he didn't like. He liked seeing when a woman was warm. His mother had been warm. Sam caught himself staring as he leaned against his truck and pulled his gaze away. Wendy lay on the faded timber of the porch, watching him in the silence. He felt a chill move through him as he transferred his gear into Jess's truck.
Allison Cundiff with The Mysterious Women of J Road. Those character introductions are such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing that with us. Next up, we have Darren C. Demaree with the forthcoming collection. This is coming out in 2 days, so it was a huge joy for me to have a sneak peek at this. Got There, Poems on Vanishing. It's coming out from April Gloaming Publishing, and the thing about that is Darren C. Demaree has a couple other out with April Gloaming collections, Clawing at the Grounded Moon and In Defense of the Goat That Continues to Wander Towards the Certain Doom of the Cliff. Darren C. Demaree grew up in Mount Vernon, Ohio. He is a graduate of the College of Worcester, Miami University, and Kent State University. He is a recipient of a Greater Columbus Arts Council grant, an Ohio Arts Council Individual Excellence Award, the Louise Bogan Award from Trio House Press, and the Nancy Dew Taylor Award from Emrys Journal. He is the editor-in-chief of the Best of the Net Anthology and managing editor of Ovenbird Poetry. He is currently working in the Columbus Metropolitan Library System. That's kind of fantastic. And living in Columbus, Ohio with his wife and children. Got There, Poems on Vanishing, is his 25th full-length collection of poetry. Synopsis. Got There, Poems on Vanishing is a collection of poetry inspired by a photograph taken by poet and essayist Alina Stefanescu of lights dancing, disappearing, and then reappearing at the edge of the frame. The poems address the human desire to leave terror, to be safe, to be seen, and to be remembered. This book-length project focuses on the motion of being and being many different things on your way forward and away. Selected review by Donna Voyer, author of Unrivered. In Darren C. Demaree's Got There, Poems on Vanishing, the title implies arrival, but the poems are a journey, each one traveling to bring the speaker closer to rest, each one ending with a plea just to be. In a landscape full of war and fires and politics, as well as deer and family and Ohio, Demaree uses repeated imagery respun into new matter, looking for an escape hatch into joy. Challenging and of the moment, Got There leaves the reader feeling, along with the speaker, that too often we are strangers to our own telling. Now, let us welcome with great thanks, Darren C. Demaree.
Thank you very much. Just hearing the introduction made me tired. That was I appreciate you reading that all. I've been really excited. So this whole book started because Alina took that photograph, and I started to write poems about it, and we made a deal that if I wrote a whole book, we could use the photo for the cover art. And I'm thankful for her and for this community that always gets to play off each other. So the sequence I'm going to read from the book is the opening arc. The first poem is Got There, Cake. Sugar cannot be misshapen. The crystal orchard holds no knowledge, only beauty and a spoon. Warm by the old fires, dare you dream about the times you turned down a layer cake when offered? It shimmers because it comes from a place that abhors secrets. There are no secrets. What if I showed you a plate that was empty, never held anything at all? Look at your hand. Sugar cannot be shapen. Be whole and simple. Got there, paw at it. The moment comes along where it feels like there can be no more play, where you turn your lack of the infinite into a very serious thing that must be reckoned with. That because this place is living and that means dying, telling jokes to a bird is a waste of time. It's the pain that has your attention. You want to hold something else. Lithe-hearted ones, you can't strip joy from the riverbanks. Please turn down every offer to keep any part of this world. Be free of weight with me. Got there, a common definition of beauty. The world is 7 questions asked 7 different ways, and an overexcited silence that builds towards an earthquake or religion, a crop raised to be burned by our confusion. Let not knowing be the gentle wave it can be. Give apples to a young hunger. Look back. Call it looking forward. Be simple with me. Got there, mournful. Dear robes, I assumed the glory of 7 years spent leaving, and all I looked was lost. Life into death, life into death. I lived on the porch so the field could feel me coming. Crop didn't dare. Be time with me. Got there. It's never going to stop. How brazen for a whole world to look away from the waters and to be more playful with burials than birthing rituals, for births to become the first consideration of the body count, of the layering of the bodies beneath the electric lamp. Is this the first ugliness? I put my forefingers on the chin of the named weight of organized chaos, and it offered to keep me tucked in a cheek. It was a dry throat sort of love. I turned away, and I never needed to turn again. Be the first step away with me. Got there, a Western idea of triumph. According to the text, which means according to the pangs of hunger and lust, we are all meant to leave home with an ugliness that defines us. I refused to leave home, so my home left me. Floods aren't subtle. I followed the horses when they went off the cliff. I flew when the horses flew. I died when the horses died. Our flesh draped poorly. Be the old nature with me. Got there, absolute want. Alone, with 2 ankles in water that can rise to make me part of any other water, I search for no other rules. The nice tune is almost silence. All legends are dry as old shit. Even the owlets know silks don't belong in the river. Born apart, I want questions. Be uncertain with me. Got there as an animal. Just be simple. Walk away from the conceits. Refuse all premise. Noonday is for police and church people. Leave at night. Don't stray from the waters. If you find good sand, write your philosophy. Meanwhile, the skin and the infinity will follow you to the places where nothing can be sold. The field is broad-minded. The dancing is insightful. Be moving with me. Got there, this map. Let's go to the pull and worry, the kinky vocabulary of death as it promises climax and delivers climax and never quakes when time glimpses back for company and sees us with frosted tongues. I know I want to be lost in the trees of land nobody owns. I don't want to be found, but I want to tell everyone where I'm going. Be vanished with me. Got there, I've written worth. There is no way to breathe without breathing through the dead. Let me begin again. I'm an American, but I've never wasted my love. I like to point out that every golf course is a burial ground, but I'll use the pool next to the 18th. Pools are where my children like to swim. I want joy, but I cannot write it. I want love, but I cannot love myself. I want to leave the city and still be seen from the highway as you pass the new county signage. I want to try in front of you. Be with me from a great distance. Got there, the rock's old ribs. I don't need to be bricked in to hear the silence of God. Hell, I have a hammer with me at all times, just in case a believer tries to corner me with a donation from the deacons. I cracked the rock, open to free the bats, the fluttering hymn of the most important cave. The ocean took it away from me. Be real salt with me. Got there, metal chains. If you cannot join me past the fields where the trees still stand up, it's because you haven't noticed that blood is yours. Swim in it. It will hurt. The sounds are the opposite of music. It's mining. Be air with me. Got there. Absence is presence. Dear deceleration burial, the place where the table used to be, winter after the sprawl, the collapsing collective, where we once built communities because we loved songs birds would sing near the riverside. What is your plan for me now that you have me? How gentle will your ice be as it navigates my final mass? I don't have 40 words for a single thing in this world. I do know the exact phrases to use for the sharpness I feel when I break a chicken bone against my thigh because I need a blade to take a politician hostage because today is Thursday. Be a dense, fleeting language with me. Thank you, everybody.
Oh my goodness. Well, everyone, thank you so much to Darren C. Demaree. Got there. Poems on Vanishing. I want you to run out and get that in 2 days if you don't have it pre-ordered already. My goodness gracious. Our final reader tonight is Chelsea C. Jackson, author of the poetry collection All Things Holy and Heathen, published by April Gloaming in 2024. Chelsea C. Jackson is a writer, editor, consultant, and poet. They hold an MFA from Drew University and use their creative work to ask hard questions and explore what it means to be human. They were a finalist in the 2022 Animal Heart Poetry Collection Contest and the 2020 Driftwood Press In-House Poetry Contest and have been published in various journals, including Passenger's Journal, Fatal Flaw Literary Magazine, Coffin Bell Journal, and the Platform Review. They also serve as the co-editor of the Main Review. Synopsis of All Things Holy and Heathen. Cycling through personal and collective realities of life, death, violation, and reclamation, these poems explore the ways in which we are divided from ourselves, one another, and the earth. The result is a delicious and daring collection full of lament, rage, joy, and hope, as it calls us to courageously question all we think we know so we may reclaim ourselves, rebuild our fractured world, and nurture a revived planet, one that glows like a fresh secret, like a flashlight under a healthy quilt. Selected review of All Things Holy and Heathen by Jose Hernandez Diaz, author of Fire Eater. Visceral, vibrant, magically singular and seductive, Jackson's imagination, style, and refreshing voice lull readers into their haunting world. We are grateful for the invitation into this chaotic realm of memory and reverie and want more and more. And here we get to hear now. Thank you so much and welcome, Chelsea C. Jackson.
Thank you. So I'm going to read some from All Things Holy and Heathen, and then I have some new work that I've never read before that I would love to read for you tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with one of my favorite poems to read aloud. And here in Virginia, as in other parts of the country as of late, we've been having some drought-like weather, and we just finally got a little bit of rain, and we have a little bit more on the way. So I'm going to read a poem called Self-Portrait as Rain. Self-Portrait as Rain. I am the chime vaulting from tin roofs and creek beds, gravestones and gardens. I am the drizzle that flirts with the canopy, bathes the birds, nurses the catfish and their river. I am the monsoon that smothers the harvest, evades the desert. I am one raindrop too many, the drop that broke the cloud, splintered the sky. The drop that falls on the split lip of the kid beat up for wearing nail polish to school. I blend with his tears. I am the deluge that rushes towards storm drains, carrying needles, fast food cartons, trash. I am the trash. I am the poison. I am the water flushing the wound clean, rinsing the eye. I am the eye.
I do not see myself. I only see myself. I am the eye and the log in it. I am the log rotting in the wood, filled with maggots, decay, and new life. I am maggots and decay. I am new life, abundant and devoured. I am devoured. I am disgorged. I am bile seeping into the ground, bending through stones and mites to reach the stream. I am the stream. I am its brother ocean, teeming and dying, welcoming and unrelenting. I am the wave that reaches the heavens, the foam that crashes to the sea floor. I am peace. I am fear. And the next piece that I'm going to read is a newer piece, and it's called Tonight I'm Thinking About. Tonight I'm thinking about how most conifers drop their needles a little at a time, each sheath unnoticed in its shedding, except by the mycelium that use the evergreen decay as breadcrumbs, fungal synapses alight beneath the litter of the canopy. I'm thinking of the invading bark beetles, their drill bit bodies, and the blue fungus they spill into pine bark, claiming fascicles and forests before their time. I'm thinking of how no two fungi are the same, how one can kill and the other can eat death. I'm thinking of people and tree trunks when they turn from unshakable sentinels to blade and take blade to skin, boring their own holes and calling it loyalty. I'm thinking of death and how I can't stop thinking about it, wondering what it means, what it's for, if it's for anything, if this is all for nothing. I'm thinking about how I've gone and made the scope too wide again, turned the eye to us and made everyone uncomfortable with my empathy, cleaved the splinter open, bled all over everything. I'm thinking about how my ancestors would use every part of the animal, and I don't even know how to use every appliance in my kitchen, how the flashlight isn't under the sink like it's supposed to be, how I need it if I'm to glimpse the bone among the blood and find the mushrooms humming in beds of needles and loam. The next piece I'm going to read, unfortunately, feels as relevant today as it did when I wrote it a few years back, but that's also why it feels important to read tonight. It's called Migration, and it has an epigraph at the beginning from the U.S. Forest Service, so I'll go ahead and read that. Monarch butterflies can travel between 50 and 100 miles a day. It can take up to 2 months to complete their journey. In the spring and summer, each successive generation travels farther north. It will take 3 to 4 generations to reach the northern United States and Canada. U.S. Forest Service. Migration. She makes slow work of it, luring them with sugar water and softness, then pinning their parchment wings between crimson nails. In the kitchen, she punches holes in the creases where their black veins meet, the only movement her threading and the muted TV's flickering montage of bombed cities. She closes one eye and flutters a bright corpse in front of the rubble, creating a second sun. How gracious I am, she muses. Outside, she prays to each frozen antenna, hangs each body on a single branch, dulled orange dripping from her new wind chime like the blood of a fresh kill, an unnatural weeping. She wants something beautiful, something silent, and rolls her eyes as the breeze rings through each royal carcass, mimicking the cries of stolen children. The next piece I'm going to read is a newer one, and it's a golden shovel, and we can maybe talk more about that in the conversation, but overall, a golden shovel is a poetry form created by Terrence Hayes, and you use a line from another poem, and each word from that line becomes the end word in the new poem. So you can basically put all of the end words together, and it creates the line from the original poem. This piece is a golden shovel that uses a line from Hannah V. Warren's Slaughterhouse for Old Wives' Tales, a poem from that book. And the poem is called Estranged South. Hannah's is, and mine is Estranged South, but with the ES and estranged in parentheses. and it feels especially appropriate to read at an April Gloaming reading. So, Estranged South, after Hannah V. Warren. The silt will swallow you when it gets a chance. It's all brackish want and hunger pains, and nothing is too green to die. Even the mosquito larvae steams with abandon in the droughted creek bed, baking disease into the already laced mud of this place. The South and its clay multicolored with bruise, but its shape is mob, is trails, is shucking corn and canopied back roads, is you feasted on the nostalgia again. Dragged up ghosts and the rotted faces they hide from a God yourself can't feel anymore. So you go to the river, the swamp, the dune, burrow far deeper than the notes of Dixie's land can reach, into the crust of mountains older than sin, than the ocean reclaiming the sapped shore and aging sewers. You scrub and atone and leave, and still algae blooms red and monstrous, spreading along your clavicle and beneath your fingernails. And this is another golden shovel. It's one of my favorite forms. And so this is a golden shovel after Bridget Pegan's Kelly's song. And it's called The Boy Head and Man Body Call to Each Other. When child men turned some great corner of craving, the boys they kept tucked beneath their ribs had to be carved out and hacked at the neck. Each ball-round eye wet in its socket, the pupilled pair rolling in the pendulum of their dripping head. With the baby fat gone, they were off to make war or kill God or kill for God or whatever it is men tell themselves they must do as if it was decree. And yet the killing was harder than it should have been. The work and its stupid sacrifice cost more than they had imagined, more than they had been told. And all the murdered, the elk, the ocean, the fur, the goat, even God's self cried, each sob echoing out like a man, like them and their dead child heads. And each of the murdered struggled, fought too hard to be weak. But as with their boy souls, they finished the job. And wanting to be stronger for their next kill, the boy men fed their glutton guts. What hunger they had, so ravenous they forgot they were men or once boys or boys playing war, didn't remember what they weren't taught, what they weren't supposed to know in the first place. That lesson, once written on rib, was now swinging with the heads of the conquered that hung from their tree of trophies. And the goat's head would be the last thing they saw before leaving to go on their final conquest. Each unsuspecting and belly-laughed drunk on all they had forced themselves to forget, singing war songs and ballads of beautiful women who just won't love them right. All the while, the elk, ocean, fur, God, and goat corpse, for the sake of their young, hummed at the boy men's backs, pursuing them. And laced with the tune was the weeping of the man and child, not separate, but as one, a reunion, a reckoning, cruel in its beauty, in its ability to alchemize sinew into song. This is the story of how the child man is made man, made murderer, made God, made sweet memory, folded behind the rib for the next child man to search his child man heart, to do better, to keep the boy. For if he dies and man murders the goat, the elk, the ocean, the fur, the gods of his holy book, and those of his child men enemies, this is how the world drowns, in hunger and blood sweetness. And my last piece tonight, to bring us maybe relieve us a little bit from the heaviness that is that piece. I like to end with this piece because it feels like a hope, a manifestation of the world that I hope we create together. And so I like to kind of put that into the universe as my last piece. This is called The Fall. Then the stars fell like bullets, a gentle weeping as billions of crinkled tacks uncoupled from a twilight sky. landing on pillows of rainforest and pools of salt water, encircling children turned witches and dragons in the park. Their tinks and dops resounding across a heaven that no longer caressed them, that purged them only to realize it alone was darkness. Now, instead of flowers, we give bouquets of cosmic bodies. We carry the celestial marbles in our pockets and make mandalas for strangers to stumble upon. We cut up our power bills. We explore the bottom of the ocean and then leave it alone. We do not add more work hours with the light. We do not forge new weapons. And the earth glows like a fresh secret, like a flashlight under a heavy quilt. Thank you.
Magnificent. Chelsea C. Jackson, author of All Things Holy and Heathen by April Gloaming Publishing, also with some newer work. Thank you so much for sharing that. Before that, we had Darren C. Demaree with the forthcoming Got There poems on Vanishing, 2 days counting down. And before that, The Mysterious Women of J Road, a novel by Allison Cundiff. Okay, so now, after all those incredible readings, we have much to discuss. So for this next portion of the event, the salon, we're going to bring back all 3 readers plus myself on screen. And we have some guiding questions to kick it off, but we want to hear from everyone in the audience. If you've got questions, drop them in the chat on whatever platform you are streaming. We've got some coming in already. That's very exciting. And authors, we want to foster an environment where the conversation runs freely. So whenever you have something to say, feel free to chime in. And let's see, I think we should get it started here with a bit of a broader question. You can make it as specific as you want. I would say, leading into this, each of your works compels us to contemplate and confront these, the components of our world that have this danger, but also this draw for us, right? And so with that in mind, we have a question from the audience. What your main inspiration for these works? Jump right in.
That's a great question. I'll start. I spent a lot of time growing up in the area around J Road. It always kind of simultaneously intrigued me and creeped me out as a kid. And I think that stuff stays with you. So that was my inspiration.
For me, it really was the photo that set me sort of on this path. There you go. What's the best thing about having a community is getting to participate with it and react to it. And I love acrostic poetry, and I love reading and rereading. Like Umberto Eco wrote these collections of essays on beauty and ugliness and the infinity of lists and legendary lands. And like, I love playing off of that kind of material. And so I would just pull up the photo. And as I sort of was plotting the arc, and sometimes if I'm doing a book length sequence, I'll plot it the same way maybe Allison would plot like a narrative arc. Like what words and phrases do you need to repeat as you're taking the reader through things? Because it's really hard if you're tying together this sort of thing. You can lose the reader pretty easily with poetry if it's a long arc. And so I would look at the photo and I would plot things out and what words to repeat. And I kept coming back to it. Alina's photo, I think it was like a cast off kind of thing. She just took the photo and was like, wouldn't this cool? And I'm like, that's incredible. And it made me consider my own like presence in this world. And do I want to be seen? Do I want to leave? And throughout the book, trying to like play with, I think in the end I got to, I want to be seen from a distance.
Yeah.
I think is where I ended up. But yeah.
Here we are.
It is.
I get that. Yeah, I actually, I love that. I want to be seen from a distance. I feel that really hard. And I think that's one of the motivations I have for like, I mean, obviously all things holy and heathen, but writing in general, I think I tend to be inspired by the world around me, by the natural world, by the more than human. And by problems or injustices or things that I see going on in the world, that me just talking about it doesn't seem to feel like enough, or it doesn't seem to do the trick, and then I still feel unsettled. And so I think I write to feel settled. I write to get like this energy that I have, like, just, it's got to get out of my body somehow. And it helps me be seen, but from a distance, and be able to kind of be really creative in how I talk about what I see, and what I feel, and what I think, and just, and ask questions that hopefully other people either are asking themselves, or maybe they don't have those questions yet, but then when they stumble upon them, they're like, I've never thought about that. Let's go deeper into that. And so that's kind of why I write in general. And then for this particular collection, Darren was saying how easy it is to lose a reader, and this collection had like several different iterations of how I helped like guide the reader through, and I finally kind of landed on moving through life, death, violation, and reclamation, because they all felt to me like life and death felt quite ambiguous. They aren't inherently good or bad, but then violation and reclamation felt a little bit more like the inverse of those things, in the sense that like violation clearly feels like a harm that's being done, and I feel like I could throw a stone outside and find harm being done. And so I just really wanted to find a container for poems that navigated that concern. And then the reclamation really like ending the book with a section that like not only felt more hopeful, but that stood in that reclamation like unapologetically, and with a sense of like, we're not asking for this to happen, we're not waiting for this to happen. This might not happen in the way that we like or that we want. I mean, there's like a doomsday poem in there where like the earth reclaims itself and like humans can like go F off, right? Like reclamation of the earth itself and by the earth itself is in there. So like just really unapologetically leaning into that was kind of how I landed to like in the sphere of like ending the book that way.
Yeah. I mean, working with the material that works on you, it's the creative charge. And yeah, all of you in the ruminations and the meditations within these works open up entire worlds and give us glimpses into areas where we might not otherwise. So thank you for that. I will say here's a quick aside as we're talking about the lush interiority. Allison, we have a question specifically related to Lillian's intuition. I wonder if this might be a quick answer or not, but is her intuition, Lillian's intuition, more due to her supernatural senses or motherly instinct?
Oh, great question. Well, I thought a lot about where our like feelings on things come from as I read this, and in some of the research I did on Ozark mythology, a lot of that intuitiveness is attributed to certain people, but I think we all kind of have it in us, right? Like I think all of us have been in a situation and it just like we're reading the room or we meet somebody and then we just kind of feel something's either off or there's some opportunity there. And I thought about expanding that into that character and actually into all Ozark folk, but most specifically women, because that was my focus for this novel. I know that in rural areas that economic circumstances, agricultural, I would say hurdles, it's hard on rural folks, but especially women, because that's my lens as a female writer. And I look at the way that, there's a lot of unpaid labor or unseen labor that takes place. So I sort of magnify it in the female characters, and whether or not a woman chooses to, bear children or care for other people's children or the world as a child, I sort of expanded in that realm. So I guess it's adjacent to being a mother, but I think also it just sort of is it's an expansion of what a lot of people feel when we either meet people and we get excited by them, or we're like, oh my God, what is it about that person, right? Or if we meet somebody and we can sort of sense like sense a threat, like it's a scent on them. There's something ominous, and those things are highlighted in the characters in the conflict, and then many of them personified into like the howlers and the sort of demons and even Old Scratch himself. So I think that stuff's visible to us in some way. If we can't physically see it, I think we can perceive it. I mean, I think most people I've met have been like, I totally knew there was something about that person. Why didn't I listen to myself? We've all probably had that situation.
That has spoken like a true poet who writes novels. I love all the poets here speaking of intentional arcs. And the way that when we work with material, it works on us as well, which leads us to another question from the audience, which is, how has each author grown and changed since completing these works? Did you level up?
I can answer that or start us off with that question, because I think I obviously read newer work tonight in addition to reading from All Things Holy and Heathen. And I mean, a lot of the books or a lot of the poems in All Things Holy and Heathen were like drafted in the midst of my MFA program, when I was really learning what it was to workshop and to find my voice and my craft and find what I was interested in writing and all of that stuff. So I would say it felt like a little bit more of a slog to find my work, or what I wanted, like the work, or what the work itself wanted it to be. Like, I'm a big believer in, like, you can take all your intentions to the page, and then sometimes the poem just wants to be something else, or the book just wants to be something else, and really like honing, like letting it, help you hone it, and leaning into what it wants to be and what it wants to do. And so I would say I probably, I'm very, very proud of this collection, and I stand by like all of this work. I think since writing it, I have found a little bit more of like a streamlined sense of coming to the page, being attuned to what the piece is, maybe wanting to be a little bit earlier, and just kind of like leaning into that, trusting my voice a little bit more. And then also, like, I obviously read a few form pieces tonight. So like getting, now that I know what my kind of voice is, and letting my voice like change and, shape and reshape all of those things. Then I can also, like, I also enjoy then playing, in the sandbox of forms and kind of challenging myself that way. So yeah, I would just say, like, I don't know that I've leveled up, but I do feel like I can get to the core of a piece, maybe a little faster and with more confidence than maybe I could a few years back.
I tend to go back and forth between, and it's great to get to talk about this in April Gloaming Salon. Y'all have published some weird things I've written. God bless you. But I tend to the Emily As poems, that sequence I write, those are my typical voice, and I'll work on those for a little while just to sound like me and work like me. And then I purposely pick projects to experiment and risk and force my voice into something else. And I've been really lucky to get to work with April Gloaming on some of those projects where it is essentially almost all like risk and vibes. I mean, I did Clawing at the Grounded Moon was about almost like a sci-fi thing about the moon crashes into Earth and like cults arrive, and we've got to deal with it. And Indiana's erased, and like all these different things. In Defense of the Goat, or as my children just call it, the Goat Book. That was about creativity taken to the nth degree. Like, what is this pursuit? If you take flight, it doesn't matter if you ever land. And with this book, like, and I'm far enough into doing this that it feels like a lifer, right? It feels like I'm going to just keep doing this regardless of what happens, which gives you that courage to experiment and to try different things, because it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. And with this one, it was like, how much comfort do I have in the terror of this world? How much comfort do I need to find away from it? And then, like, how much does an audience, how much does being seen mean when you get to be this creative person? And it still means something. But I much enjoyed the things I've been writing recently. Have all been like, I did a book called No Nation State Wants Its People to Outlive It. So that's pretty dark. But this book was so much fun, and like approaching it and getting to play with that idea of me in this world and ego and different things, and sort of where you want to end up, not where you are.
Vehicles delivering us to the next place. Allison, do you want to tell us any about how your work has worked on you and where it's brought you?
Well, I think what I really loved about all the reading is there was some thematic creepiness that sort of strung through all through tonight. I was like, oh my God, this would be like a great like collection to teach, because I was putting my teacher eyes on it. I really want to first start by saying, like, this press was remarkable to work with, like encouraging and ask challenging questions. And I have to just give a shout out to your promotion, the cocktail, Theo's work. I don't know. I wanted to ask who did everybody's cover, because Theo blew me away with mine, but I loved your covers too. And I thought the whole press everything was just sort of lifted through this experience, I thought.
We've got Theo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Theo also, right? Yes. And then I think Robin worked on this one, right? And this is Alina's photograph. So
gorgeous.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think when you feel like somebody really likes your work, it makes you want to be better, and it makes you respond to criticism differently, or constructive feedback differently. And I really have to give it to April Gloaming, because they made me want to work hard. You all did a great job. And listening to the other poets tonight, I mean, that was amazing. It's just beautiful delivery, beautiful diction and syntax. So I think the whole experience, that's how it should be, right? Like Aristotle said, the people with whom we associate should make us want to be better. So I kind of felt that way with the press in general.
Yes. Oh, yes. Such good pressmates. Yes. Okay. We do have amazing things pouring forth from April Gloaming, and through each of you, we've named the creepiness. So let's lean into that. We have a question that did cover, haunting. Okay, so all three of your titles deal in some way with haunting: the past haunting, the present in Allison's Ozarks, things that vanish but leave their mark in Darren's poems, and the cycling of the sacred and profane in Chelsea's collection. Can you each speak to the role of haunting or the uncanny in your work? What draws you to the space between what is present and what is absent? And a little aside, has that theme carried over into your current writing? So we're just talking about haunt.
Well, I'll go ahead. I think it's always there, and I think it can be like the horrors persist, right? It can be a political thing. It could be just walking through, like, there's been a lot of weather changing. And I keep thinking about that as sort of a metaphor for things, but instead of turning away, I think we have to turn toward it. I don't know, some therapist wrote that in order to get rid of anxiety, we have to let it hang out with us. And so I think that goes for the darkness too. And it creates a space for some beautiful stuff. Chelsea, I think it was in one of your poems, you were talking about kind of like letting the body be a receptacle for a lot of these things. And I feel like kind of was a current that came through us. I mean, it's half of everything, right? The darkness but it's fun. I don't know. I wanted to kind of bounce back. Do you all like horror movies too? Are you horror movie fans? Or is it just me? Because I was just like, I watched a lot of scary movies when I was writing this and thinking, like, where could I get even creepier? So I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. No one else in my house will watch them with me, but yeah.
So you just sit there at your desk and like solo?
No, I'm one of those annoying up at 5 a.m. to work out people. And so I'll like put on a horror movie and work out or watch whatever. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Same. I mean, I like horror movies. I like the ones that really make you think, and the ones that you're just like, oh, I think I'm confronting. I mean, I think that's what a lot of horror is, right? Like we're confronting a lot of our own fears or fears that we have as, within the human condition. So I would say I do like horror. I also am like one of the only, like my partner won't watch them with me very often. But I will also say that I tend to have like a very vivid imagination. And half the time that will do enough for me. Like, I mean, my dreams and the nightmares and the imagination, aspect will kind of take me pretty far in my creative process, quite honestly. Like some of my poems or my short stories, they start out as dreams, and just an image or something that just pops into my mind. And so that's, I don't watch tons of horror movies, but I would say like there's enough, there's quite enough going on, usually from time to time in my mind. So.
Well, and I think all these things deal with tethers, right? When we're talking about haunting, when we're talking about proximity to horror or terror or anything like that. And artistically, it can be a great amount of fun to either cut the tether or jump rope with it or do any number of those things. It just depends on what you want the project to do.
Yeah, I like feeling talking like around that tethering, I like feeling uncomfortable. I like feeling unsettled, and I find that I quite like making readers feel unsettled, but in a way that is that lets them know that like I'm with them. I'm accompanying them through it, and I'm accompanying them, and not putting something on them that I also haven't navigated or walked through or walked with. And so I would say like that's for me, writing work that feels haunting, like I don't think I could not do that, but I also take great care to make sure that it's not like heavy for the sake of heaviness. It's earned. It's like feeling really earned, and it's not feeling cheap or unfair for a reader, that they know that I'm with them and that I've thought really carefully about where we're going and that we're going together.
Yeah, it's a potent practice to name these horrors and give them a home. Oftentimes that in itself is transformative. And speaking of naming, I saw we had a question about what each of your favorite horror films are.
Oh, man.
I mean, I feel like I have like 4 or 5 on rotation from childhood that just, I can't find a newer one that scares me as much as those. And it probably contextually has to do with early exposure, but like John Carpenter's The Thing, Poltergeist, The Exorcist, Jaws. I mean, there's just, Pet Sematary, which is also, a remarkable book by Stephen King. But I think those are my 5 MVPs. Scary.
Yeah, the Thing would be the top of mine. I love The Thing. I would make an argument for the movie Spanglish as a horror movie, but I don't want to watch it. That's sorry. Anytime I can turn the knife on Indiana or Spanglish, I'm there. No, I think there are lots, and especially some of the more thoughtful horror that's come about like that. Just sort of like it becomes both thriller and you get lost in what's happening. And I was going to say this actually about I've read Allison's poetry for years. This is the first time I'm getting to hear fiction, which has been great. But some of the work that we're talking about in terms of that is like not being able to figure out what's happening or not being able to figure out how it's being done. And more often than not, like I get that from translated works where you're like, I can't, I've been studying poetry and writing poetry for decades, and I can't figure out how it got put together. And I think that's, I found that some in Allison's poetry. Chelsea, I haven't gotten to see yours on the page yet, but I'm excited to play with it. And I think that comes with horror movies, right? That's kind of this prompt. Like, I can't quite figure out how this got put together and why I feel the way I feel. And that to me is almost more of an impetus, more profound than the thing that I understand that is great. Just because I don't know, can't quite figure out what's happening to me.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of along those lines of like, bleeding into thriller or, making us think. I would say it's a newer one. But every time like I'm with folks that I think would enjoy it, I try to get them to watch Heretic with me. um, I just think A24 is just awesome in general. But also the idea of religious trauma and like religious tenets and doctrine and the on your edge of your seat, and nothing really like gruesome happens until like 3/4 of the way through, like half the way through, and I don't know, it just is deeply unsettling. But all of it feels like really well done. And then I'm also kind of on a rewatch binge of The Haunting of Hill House, which is, in all fairness, a series, right? But a limited series. And I really love the, like, obviously horror, but I don't think it's primarily horror. It's really navigating and leaning into like the human experience, the tragedy, familial relationships, and navigating like grief and loss and the unknown and fear. And I don't know, there's something about that show that always, and it's like deep, like it's just like raises so much emotion in me and pretty much almost everybody that I've ever talked to about it. Just feel a real like emotional response to that show. So I would say those are probably the two that come to mind for me.
Thank you. I'm going to jump on that word navigating because we have a question about place. Allison, your novel draws deeply on the folklore and landscape of the Ozark Mountains. Chelsea, your collection moves across sweeping geographies from a reimagined Garden of Eden to Jupiter's Great Red Spot, while also being intimate. Darren, your poems reckon with arrival and departure. How does place, whether hyperlocal or cosmic, function in your writing? Is there tension between the specific and the universal? Where do we find ourselves inside these poems, inside these stories?
I guess I'll start. I think that setting is an absolute character in this novel, and
literally, actually, I've got to jump in there to say that. I mean, the setting has a personality.
Oh my gosh, yes, and it happens to the people. But I feel like that's a lot of us. Like a colleague once was like, reimagine a favorite text and then like have your creative writing students adjust the setting, time and place to a new location and a new era, and like how profoundly that would change things. So this place, J Road, is a real highway where like our cabin was when I was growing up, and it always felt kind of off. And so I think it's everything in this novel, and it shapes the people, it shapes their isolation. It I don't know, even the sort of temperature feels different there when you're under a canopy of trees, especially in like the southern Midwest. It's as we understand how it is to be around our trees. Trees are different across the United States, but it cools the area under it, and so it almost feels colder there somehow, both spiritually and literally. So yeah, place is huge for my text. What about the poets?
Microclimates.
Yeah, I mean, place is central, I would say, like both to most of the poems in my collection and much of the poems that I write, but also like All Things Holy and Heathen came out like just a couple year and a half after I moved back to my home state of Virginia. And it, when I read A Strange South, like that idea of like, atoning and leaving and then coming back, like that was my experience. I grew up being told that I didn't belong in the South. I was either too idealistic or too liberal or too dreamt too big or whatever have you. Like I didn't fit in whatever box my community thought that I should fit in. And I really left with that understanding that I shouldn't be here. And it felt like at the time it maybe felt more empowering than it actually was. But as I spent time away and I realized like nobody wanted a leftist southerner up north either. And it wasn't I mean, I found places to belong, right? But I really missed Virginia land. And I missed my family. My sister was starting to have children, and I believe strongly in a village, and I wanted to be a part of that village, but I wanted to be a part of that village like on Virginia land, like in the tidewater and in the swamps, and take the kids to the beaches that I grew up on, and just, really feeling a pull back. And so April Gloaming really took my book in around a time when I was figuring out what it meant and rediscovering what it meant to return to the South and to the land that I loved so much, and a land that is generationally has been a part of my family for generations. And I don't know, it just felt really empowering to have that. And I feel like the land is a central character. I had a candle, a signature scent. I worked with an apothecary to create a signature scent for my book. And she worked on it, and she was like, that you mentioned some sort of body of water 160 times. And it's like swamp and ocean and salt, salt water and brine and things like that. And she was like, even when the poems aren't about place, they feel very place-based and rooted. And I would say just also to expand, because there is a piece about being on Jupiter, and there's we're in the Garden of Eden a couple of times. But I think obviously Virginia plays a big role in the land here, but also the earth as a whole, and even what we think we know about the earth, and things that we take for granted, things that are always going to be here when that's actually not the case. And they're more fragile than we know, and they're definitely more fragile than we treat them. And so even when I'm talking about myths that we have inherited and reconfiguring them, or even when I'm talking about the great red spot on Jupiter, which is in fact dying, it is shrinking. And, growing up thinking that it's always going to be there, and the planet will always be here, and the trees and the climate and the earth as it is will always be here, and really challenging myself and readers to realize that place changes, and it especially changes if we can't take care of it, and in taking care of it, take care of ourselves. So that was a very long-winded answer, but the idea of a specific place versus widening that scope to just be a place in general is important in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh
no, you're good. I write about Ohio all the time. When I was younger and read everything Henry wrote, and was like, well, I don't ever need to read any of that ever again. The only thing I ever remembered was when he talked about once he wrote it, he could put it down. He'd put down many things that way, is the only thing I remember. And even that was wrong. So when I wrote about Ohio and opioid addiction in Two Towns Over, when I've written about Ohio, you never put it down and leave it. Every time you're doing that, you're actually sort of pledging to carry it further. Yeah. And so I was worried when I wrote so specifically about some of these things that were wrong with the place I was from, that I wouldn't be welcome back, or that was me pushing it away. And the truth is, it's just making you inextricable from it. And so the more that you're sort of nose to nose with the place that you grew up from, the more live you can be with it. I don't think it weighs you down. I think it makes you who you are, even if it's in a direct reaction to where you're from. That part of it stays with you and never goes away.
Yes, thoughtful descriptions here of what process. And I am going to speak to a question that I saw flash through while we were talking about this. So this concept of belonging, whether it's where a poem might belong in a book, or where a word might belong in a story, or where a description might belong with the place we are putting it, or just by naming that, how it might speak to the belonging itself and create that sense. Would any of you like to speak to this concept of belonging? What is belonging under the mantle of your work?
Yeah, I think besides belonging to the people that live in this house, the most important thing that matters is belonging to groups of folks like this. And it's been fantastic that I've gotten to say Alina's name as often as I have when I've been talking about this book, and everyone should read everything she's written. She is sincerely brilliant. And belonging to this and sort of being pushed further by like hearing these incredible words by Allison and Chelsea tonight, right? And to carry that with me to the next time that I get to sit down. You know, my day job is running a library. I don't get a ton of like dedicated writing time, but I know the next time is going to be Tuesday morning. I know I'm going to get some pie. It's the only time I ever have sugar is when I write. And I know being part of this tonight is going to carry forward to me in a way that is tangible, is actionable. So belonging to like this group and belonging to like the folks that work at this press and things like that to me is sort of what feeds me is as close to what my family feeds me in the same way.
And also writing time belonging to Tuesday morning.
That's right.
Sugar belonging to writing time.
I don't have to be at the library till 12.
Would anyone else like to offer anything? We do have other questions.
Just say I'm jealous because I have to be at school by 7 every morning. I'm up by like 4:30 most days. So noon is like, I'm almost done with my day. Jealous, Darren.
Belonging at school at 7 a.m. It's a thing, yeah.
Darren, I want to thank you for those kind words. I have to agree. I'll just add on to that very quickly that poets write for other poets. So I want to thank you all for just sharing this space. I think probably all of us felt at some point growing up, we were that like weird kid that played with words or something. And so finally, I tell my students all the time, I'm like, it gets better. Like the older you get, like things do get better. And I think there's finally spaces for where I felt pretty profoundly alone throughout a pretty long adolescence. And I'm glad for that retrospective aloneness, because it gives me lots of content to write about. But I'm extra glad that there are people like y'all out there that we can all listen to one another, because that's a delight. So I feel that I agree, Darren. That's very well put, beautifully put. And I do agree that this is a place where belonging exists.
I love that. I love the isolation leading us into community when we lean into what it is. It is wonderful when you keep at it. Yes, it does bring you to that place and that sense of togetherness and that reaching through time and space to connect. But considering that theme of duality that seems to run through all three of your works, we've got the mysterious and the known, the holy and the heathen, the act of getting somewhere while vanishing. How do you navigate contradiction and duality in your writing? Is this something you consciously pursue, or does it find you?
I can speak to that largely because All Things Holy and Heathen was, by the time it was like in its almost like fully fledged state, it was pretty obvious it was trying to blur the lines of duality, like very intentionally. And I have never really worked well in duality. I'm a big believer in nuance, and I'm a big believer in messiness, and in spectrums, and it's kind of talking about belonging as well, but being categorized as either weird or to this, to that. Really just, it does feel super isolating, and it feels overly simplistic, and I don't like thinking simplistically. I love complexity, and I think that is just a key to the human condition. And so All Things Holy and Heathen really, and my writing in general, really seeks to like blur the lines that people often take for granted as just being really stark and divided. and just giving maybe just a whisper or an echo of like messiness or complexity, or just a question or a thought or an image that just kind of trips that little line a little bit, and just makes people do a bit of a double take and think, oh, I've never thought of it that way, or that goes against my understanding of something. A lot of all things holy and heathen came up around like what is sacred and what is profane, and like looking at the world and being told that we live in this hierarchy of like, man, woman, natural world, and that dominance, and really just wanting to like make it super messy and blur all the lines and turn it on its head. And so I think that's what it's kind of doing intentionally. And if I can help guide people into a little bit of like complex thinking or questioning, then that makes me, feel like we've worked together, we've done something together as writer and reader.
Well, and I think, and I don't even think I've talked to the folks at April Gloaming about the process for how these poems, like their original form. But that sort of contrast thing came about. The form is completely derived from Alina's photograph. And if you look at it, you see the light go across and then vanish. So every single one of these poems was written with a 9-line, then 6-line, and then a tercet, a 3-line stanza that I yanked. So the first version of all these poems has a tercet there that is not in any of the published poems or in the book, because I wanted, when you were reading it, to feel like the photograph felt, where something got yanked from you. And you end up with that last flash, that message, that be with me in these different ways, right? Mm-hmm. Without knowing how you ultimately landed there. And saying it out loud for the first time, that's an absurd thing to do. But that's really cool. That's what I did, where I was like, there's only one way for me to like really, and we were talking about tethers, to really like play with this. Mm-hmm. And it was to write something that was complete to me, that I made incomplete as a part of the project. And that sort of energy of like pulling the rug out from the reader and then pulling them back in at the end. I don't think I could have pulled it off without like very practically knowing that that's what the form was going to be.
Showing something by the shape of what's missing, highlighted in relief. Yes. Allison, did you want to speak to duality a little bit? We have quite a bit of revelation in your work.
Yeah, I love that. I love the question, and I think of Lillian as a character and how she's both mother and then turns out she's Southern born. So she's got this darkness inside of her. And I think there's, the advice her grandmother gives her is it's in all of us. It's just which side of us we're going to go with. And I think that shadow self has to be there in order for us to know what not to be. So I like how they sit together, and I like how we've got constant choice. I mean, it's biblical, it's mythological, and I think when it comes out in postmodern fiction or poetry, as with the case with Darren or Chelsea, it's really exciting. I just love how it takes different forms in tonight's reading.
Yeah. I love how all three of your works seem to offer a resolution between the natural and the imposed. And there is a specific question here. Let's call this out before we move on to the next one. Chelsea, your collection ends with a note of revival and hope, even amid lament. Allison and Darren, where does hope live in your work?
Ooh. I think hope is always in action, right? It's in that friction you create, whether it's, and it sounds like Allison in your novel, like, I think the friction between that light and dark, right? Like something's going to be generated. Like if amidst terror, amidst darkness, amidst all these things, if you're still willing to move, if you're still willing to act, if you're still willing to do those things, like even if it's not noticeable by the human eye, like sparks are being created.
That's probably, yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you. That's lovely. There was an article in the New York Times last week, and it was like, everything's horrible. Go ahead and have the baby. Go ahead and plant the tree. And I was like, wow, yes. Like, and I wonder if 100 years ago, that's what people were feeling like, around the time of the Great Depression. I just had a bender of rereading Steinbeck, and I'm like, God, was it worse then or is it worse now? And everything's been always so difficult to plant the tree and have the baby. So for us, I guess it's our book babies, right? We had book babies.
Well, and then to complete the illusion, like, who's pouring kerosene on oranges now, right? Like, what's happening?
Always accelerating. All three of you write about power in different registers: the power of folklore in Deep-Rooted Place in Allison's novel, the social and spiritual power structures in Chelsea's poetry, and the quiet reckoning with loss in Darren's work. What role does power or its absence play in what you write? And what do you hope readers carry with them after closing your books? You have this power to affect the reader. We're talking about the conversation with the reader that's happening in that liminal space. Let's illuminate.
Well, in J Road, I think it contradicts where power traditionally in the West in a capitalist society comes from, which is from business or from the wealthy or from a patriarchal society. But the power in the novel kind of comes from silent places, which are not always visible. And it's there, it's under everything, or it wraps around everything. And not so much to challenge those aforementioned power structures, but just sort of, they just don't need the attention or don't generate the attention. So I think more, it's the subtle currents that run through everything that maybe aren't as visible. I think in my work is where I can see power.
That undertow. All right, yes.
No, I think autonomy is power. I think choosing to see the world closer to what you want it to be. And with this book, it's how much power do you want to have as the individual? I mean, the ultimate individual isn't seen by anyone. They disappear and they go. And the truth, by making the decision to be seen, is that I want that power to be shared. I want to be with people. Not all people.
That's right. From a distance, as you mentioned.
But yeah, you don't need to be all powerful. I think power comes from sharing, and power comes from the community, and making the decision that you have that decision to make, as opposed to just like, I'm going to go along with everything all the time. And it's tough to express that in a way that is still hopeful, but expressing it, like we said earlier, expressing it is the hope.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the power to extrapolate and exponentiate, which you do in your work, all based on this photograph that has its many iterations there present in that single frame. And then we delve into each one. That's, yes, elaborative, and I love it. Anything more on your use of power? How do you wield it?
I'm thinking of power almost all the time, in one way or another. I often think of power structures. I think of power, like systems of power. I think of the scope of power. The power that we have as individuals, but often like how we as individuals are often up against systems of power that are designed to minimize the power that we have and wield, and external and internal power. So how I can maybe affect the world around me, but then also like, no matter what's going on in the world around me, like it's taken me a while to figure out how to like feel empowered to have agency over my own internal landscape. And so I don't think any of these things like negate one another. I think for me, like I see power structures and oftentimes like how corrupt like this kind of absolute power, or like intense amounts of power and influence, like what that can do. and how biases and injustices blend with those in a way that does real harm. And at the same time, when folks are reading my work, I'm hoping that they're seeing kind of a light on those power structures and systems, but also like feeling maybe a little like a flame within, to either continue asking questions, to continue wondering, to continue thinking about something in a new way, to not be afraid to confront their own biases or wonderings or thoughts, or their own perspectives, and to maybe widen those, because our perspectives have been shaped by power and power structures and systems. And so, I mean, I often think of power like in terms of scope, in terms of individual and collective power, in terms of community. I'm finding real strength in communal power these days, and what that might mean, what that looks like. And even like in the darkest moments where I'm feeling very overwhelmed, I look out my window, or I scroll through my phone, and I see power doing great harm, and I feel powerless. That's when I turn to writing, and it helps me feel empowered, but I'm also hoping the reader feels empowered. And the thing that comes to mind when you ask this question was a line from The Great Red Spot, the poem about the Great Red Spot on Jupiter. And there's a line in there that I write, eventually all living things stop eating. And that kind of gives me like this odd sense of comfort, because this, and I have it in a poem also called The Names of Death, like this great equalizer, like it doesn't negate any of the harm done in life, but we are made of all the same stuff, and we are all eventually going to fold back into the earth in a way that the power like is greater than us anyway. Like the natural world is going to consume us in a way that we are powerless against. And I find that really sometimes very scary, but most of the time very comforting. And the last thing I'll say is the power of like myth and inherited stories runs really deep in my writing, and in this book especially, because I think that's one of the ways that we're taught lessons, and we're taught rules and even biases, and what to be afraid of, what to think, how to see the world. And so that's why I do take usually biblical stories, but stories of all kinds, and kind of challenge them or look at them from a different angle, because to me, that's a way of challenging power systems and structures. And I think that's a really like imaginative, kind of hopefully accessible way to do that. So I think about power a lot if it's not evident.
Oh, I mean, gorgeous clarity of direction there. I love where you're reaching into that concept of power and responsibility, right? And then we can look at it as that ability to respond. And here you are with the narrative that you have claimed, that you have worked, and you're passing on that torch and beacon. And so with that in mind, we've got the question, words of advice for aspiring authors. There's some power you've got there, and you can pass on. What did you need to hear? You'll reach back and tell yourself.
Goodness.
Don't be afraid of anything. Like this is as low stakes or as high stakes as you want it to be. Experiment, try, fuck around and find out. Just like do all the things, write all the poems, all the books, and that's what you're going to carry with you. I think the act of writing is more important to me than the act of publishing.
For sure.
It's getting to have that experience and getting to do the work and getting to, I mean, we were just talking about power, right? But the one thing that all writers have that's a superpower is that act of empathy. And I think getting to be that person and process things in interesting ways and explore and experiment makes me who I am as a person. And getting to have that practice is something I'm never going to put down. So if you look at it like that, I've got this whole life to create and to experiment, then you're going to do some weird and wild and great things. It's not all going to work, but who cares?
Yeah, really, you're not going to make anything if the fear of making a mistake keeps you from it. So yes, play, get in there, and keep it coming. What else we got?
I'll say, you know, I had this phrase that I thought of about 5 years ago, and that is I could wallpaper my house with my rejection letters. Like I could wallpaper my house. So it's okay.
And paste them up with the tears.
It's just like, and they keep coming in like one a day, and it's like, okay, you know, that's okay. So, and they, you know, some people, you're not for everybody, and that's okay. That's great, in fact, because if we were for everybody, how completely benign we'd all be. So I like that we're not for everyone.
Yeah, I agree with that. It took some personal growth to be open to like criticism and feedback, because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and like doing things quote unquote right was like my safety kind of the wall that I built around myself, right? And so I think like, I mean, that all that to say, like knowing yourself is only going to make you like a better writer, like and knowing who you are, your stories, how they shaped you, just knowing your shadow, like all of those things, just in my opinion, make you a better writer, a better reviser. Like revising work is something that I think is also a skill that is honed. And then the one piece of advice that I got from a mentor, because when I started writing poetry, I was just like abstract imagery out the wazoo. There was nothing grounding my work, and like ever. And I had a mentor say, like, the personal is the universal and the individual is the collective. And that really, speaking with this idea of like getting to know oneself, like being able to lean on personal stories or observations, or the using the I in the poem a little bit more, and realizing that like the reader often connects to the personal because they can see themselves there, and not feeling like everything has to be so abstract because that's what good poetry is. That was like a really big learning and very helpful for me, to kind of add some grounding and shape to my work. And then find a good workshop group, like find a good community where you can share your work and read your work and refine your work, and do the same for other writers in community.
Yeah. Specificity is the point of entry, and find your community.
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh, you all, I have loved watching the sunset at each of your places. We're going to have this closing question, unless any pop through at the last moment, but it is the fun one. Not that they haven't all been, but what can we expect next from the three of you? Are you working on any new projects?
Yeah, I'm back to poetry right now, although there is a character in J Road whose story I'm interested in exploring, and it's one of the older granny women. And I'm interested in the stories of more elderly folk, especially if they inhabit a world that's soon to be closed because of just changing times. But I'm back to writing poetry, so we'll see. That's it's fun to go back and forth between genres. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm kind of going the other way. So I am working on a second poetry collection, and that is, if I can sit down and get it like in order and revised, then that is coming. But I have a novel that I've written that is in desperate need of a second pass, and like me looking at that and getting it put together. And then I'm also getting into some creative nonfiction work, largely around like environmental essays. But yeah, largely it's the second poetry collection, and then returning to this novel that I've written right now.
Excellent.
right now I'm working on a manuscript called Creek Bed Meditations that's meant to just sort of try to focus more on like simple and here and that kind of thing. But I've got on the horizon 2 more books coming out from April Gloaming, which I'm thrilled will come out in the next couple of years. One, the Emily as an Echo book, the Emily poems inspired by the History of Beauty Umberto Eco collection. And then a book of poems I wrote about working at the library called The Library Poem. So I'm excited to keep working with you all, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Oh, fantastic. Yay.
Congrats.
I love it. I love it. We're mixing up the genres. We're bringing in new things. Y'all, thank you so much for this delightful and enlightening conversation. I can't wait to see your forthcoming. And let's see. Well, we'll show the books again. Let's do that. The Mysterious Women of a J Road by Allison Cundiff. Thank you. We've got Darren C, Demaree. We've got their poems on Vanishing coming in 2 days. We've got Chelsea C. Jackson's All Things Holy and Heathen. Magnificent, all 3 of you. Oh, and thank you to everyone who tuned in live or who may catch us later on YouTube. Until then, don't forget to marvel at the beauty of this world. You can do that with good reading and ruminating, maybe revisiting this conversation. We got some good advice for aspiring readers, things to look forward to. That's what we need in this world. So we create and put more of that goodness in there. We maybe perform some alchemy on some of the shit we've been handed and grow some flowers. We'll be back in 3 months on Sunday, July 27th. As always, at sunset. Y'all take good care, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Christine.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.